الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيد الأولين والآخرين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم أخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمنا بنور الفهم وافتح علينا بمعرفة العلم وسهل أخلاقنا بالحلم واجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. اللهم اجعل أعمالنا خالصة لوجهك ولا تجعل فيها حظا لغيرك يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Was apt. So we're still reading from Al-Risalatul Jami'ah, The Essentials of Islam by Ahmad bin Zayn al-Habashi. And the first discussion that we have taken in the book is that of the prayer. And we said that the prayer constitutes the key to paradise. Into this house of worship, we also require another key, and that key is purity. The most common of these needs of purity is that of wudu. And so this is the first discussion that we took in terms of purity. And we said that wudu, in terms of its essentials, consists of six things. The first is the niyyah, the intention which exists in the heart, and we reveal it by pronouncing it on the tongue. The second is that of washing the face, and we drew the limits of the face, saying that it is from the natural hairline to the chin, then from ear to ear, from jaw to jaw in terms of width. Then we said that followed by that is the washing of both arms up to and including the elbows, including the hands. Then we said that followed by that is washing the 2 feet up to and including the ankles. And we said that the sixth of these fundamentals or essentials or arkan or obligations of wudu is to do the actions in this particular order. And we took a number of discussions around this. Then we went on to discuss some sunnahs before washing the face, some sunnahs after and including that of washing the face and all the other fard parts. And we discussed some little sunnahs for the wudu, as well as some du'as that a person can present at the different junctures of washing their limbs. Thereafter, we took of the ritual bath, that of the ghusl. And we said that in terms of rituals, the ghusl consists of the niyyah, the intention, which, as we mentioned, wudu exists in the heart, right, and is aided and revealed by the tongue. And the second integral or component of the is simply to allow flowing water to reach every part of the body, accompanied by this intention. And we went on to discuss a number of issues, as well as sunnahs and the practical method for one to take this bath. And then I think we discussed some occasions where it will be recommended for a person to take wudu, right? And I don't believe we did this in relation to the ghusl, but we know the sunnah ghusls, such as the Jumu'ah and the Eid prayer, and to wash at least once a week, right? Which would be the best day would be the Jumu'ah, and so forth, right? Then we went on to discuss, or then we went on to enumerate rather the nawaqid of wudu, those things which nullify the person's wudu. And we said in terms of the things that nullify the wudu, there are 4. And what finds itself out of these 4 categories, right, whatever it is will not break the wudu. And in enumerating those 4, we listed them as follows: the emission of anything from the 2 waste passages, right, which would be the person's rear and front private parts will break the wudu, right? Then we said that losing control of one's intellect or becoming unconscious will break one's wudu, in whichever way that takes place, right? And we will mention, when we mention the detail, we will mention an exception to this. Then we said that touching of the private parts, whether it be of the male or the female, whether it be one's own private parts or someone else's private parts, with the palm of the hand, right, and the inside of the fingers will nullify the person's wudu, right? And we said whether the person is alive or dead, it will still nullify the wudu. Then we said that the touching of the skin of a person of the opposite gender, right? Um, if this person is not a mahram, right? And a mahram can be translated as somebody who's like uh, unmarriageable kin. You know, kin, family. Unmarriageable kin, right? So you have marriageable family, isn't it so? And you have unmarriageable family, right? So your unmarriageable family would be considered your mahram, and there would be people that they're not such as the person's mother-in-law. You might not consider it family, but she becomes unmarriageable nonetheless. So he has over here in the footnote, touching of unmarriageable kin does not nullify the wudu. A man is prohibited from marrying his mother and grandmothers, daughters, sisters, nieces. What's a niece? Brother's daughter, right? And their daughters, right? So that means your niece's daughters as well. Paternal and maternal aunts. A paternal aunt is father's mother's sister, right? And the paternal aunt is the father's sister, right? Great aunts. What's a great aunt? Grandparents, siblings, right? Grandparents, sister, basically. The wives of his children. So if it is a male, then the wives of his children cannot marry, right? Yes, wives of his children. And grandchildren, right? Grandchildren. A woman is prohibited from marrying her father, grandfather, etc. So the opposite would apply to the woman, right? So, in terms of the first of that, which would break one's wudu or nullify one's ablution as such, would be anything that exits the two private parts, right? Whatever it is, whether that thing be normal or abnormal, whether that thing is a gas or it's a solid or it's a liquid, or it has what you call it, dual particle. You know, in quantum physics, they talk about it like wave particle theory. So it's like it's not real. It's like almost like a confused state of matter, right? But that's like on the subatomic level when you start. If you know anything about quantum physics, so even if it finds itself in that state, right, it comes out to break the fast. I mean, it will break the person's wudu, right? The point is, whatever comes out of the person's private parts, whether it's, you see, because sometimes medically something strange can come out, right? Sometimes it may be, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us and give us bodily relief and make us healthy. Sometimes it might be that the person has kidney stones. Isn't that so? The kidney stones has to come out of the person's urinary tract. Now, this is not something normal that comes out of the person's private part, but if it comes out, it will break the wudu. Isn't it so? What about putting something into the private part? Will break the wudu? No. Right? But when you take it out, it will break the wudu. If you take it out. Right? So like that. So the what do they call it? The tablet that you put in your ear, suppository. Will the suppository break your wudu? right? If you have a glove on, and, right? So there could be a way that it doesn't break your wudu, isn't it so? It doesn't come out. Slips out. Slow down. So whatever comes out of the two waste passages, whatever it is, it will break the wudu, right? So the scholars here, the Shafi'i scholars will say illa al-mani, except sperm, right? Sperm won't break the wudu. That's a very difficult discussion to understand because what is the benefit of sperm not breaking your wudu, but you still need a ghusl, which is more than a wudu, right? What is the benefit of you have wudu, but you need a ghusl? So, for example, you sit here, you fall asleep, you have a wet dream, right? So now, what happens is that when you fell asleep like that, and you're firmly seated on the ground, you wake up, now you have wudu, but you need a ghusl. Now, what's the benefit of being in that state? What can you do with that wudu? Huh? No, you can't recite Quran. What can you do with that wudu? Even me, I don't know. Right. I forgot. There is a benefit. It's a very technical. I don't quite remember the discussion. It doesn't come to me now.
It's just a mistake that we do. So if you Allah will take you in the state we do.
But also in the state of Jannah.
Is there a difference between all of the different? Obviously, when the sperm count getting also, does that go the same go for seed?
Same thing. I think it's a synonym. Okay, what's the difference?
One carries the other.
Oh,
So like
You're talking about the tree.
the tree comes out the same.
The tree.
No. So that will break your wudu undoubtedly, but you don't require ghusl. Right? I'm not saying when it accompanies the sperm. I'm saying on its own it doesn't require ghusl. Right? Right. It doesn't come to mind now, inshallah. Perhaps. Maybe towards the end of the lesson, sometimes things come back to you. But there is a benefit. It's just not clear to me at the moment. So I think that point is understood, whatever comes out of the person's private parts, right? Then the second is becoming unconscious or losing one's intellect, right? I didn't quite like the for us to say losing one's intellect because it gives the impression of like you necessarily, rakmal, So that's not what the fiqh is trying to tell us over here by losing one's intellect, right? Or loss of intellect. I think a more inclusive way of saying it would be becoming unconscious, right? Becoming unconscious. But then loss of intellect would also, like if you went mad or you were possessed by a jinn, for example, right? Or you went like medically insane, or you have like temporary like insanity, like sometimes I have no better way of putting it, like you hak. So if that happens to you and then you like medically insane, then all of that would constitute now what we would call loss of intellect, right? But then you look at like sleeping would be considered just being unconscious, really. A person knocks you out, right? That you would be considered to be unconscious. You faint, we call it unconscious, right? But when we say loss of intellect, we understand it in a more medical sense, right? So whether it's loss of intellect or whether it's unconsciousness, whichever of the understandings it will it will cause the person to break their wudu, right? But now here the jurist will say what? Except if a person is the re is firmly seated, right? And they fall asleep like that, and they wake up in the same position, right? So the person is firmly let us call it seated on a surface, right? Whichever surface it is, and they fall asleep in that manner and they wake up in the same position. And they do this, they still have wudu, right? When they do this, they still have wudu. If you wake up in a different position, right? Or if, yeah, simply that. If you wake up in a different position, right? You wake up half like this, or in any which way that you have moved in terms of the position of your hair, then the wudu will be broken. There's a hadith. The Prophet ﷺ says that the eyes, I narrate the hadith in meaning, the eyes is the tie for one's uh, sphincter, if you want to. Right. So the moment you close your eyes, you lose the ability to discern whether or not you pass the wind. Right? But when you awake, then you will know whether or not you passed wind. Right? Therefore, the Sharia is not going to put you, like, place you under such duress that you have to get a person every time you sleep. You have to get somebody, to wait. And when you wake up, look here, anything came out? Okay, no problem. Carry on. I can make salah. Right? So the default is that when you fall asleep, you don't know whether or not you passed the wind. So the Sharia is going to say, in terms of ruling, when you fall asleep, you will break, except in this condition. Right?
Question on your position when you sit, when you fall asleep in this manner,
Mm.
when you wake up on this side, although your sit bones are firmly seated on the surface, okay? So the understanding is, biologically, if you're lying down, your bones are in a relaxed state. That's why it's easy to pass the wind.
Mm.
So the clarity around that for me is, if you remain seated on a firm surface, either way, if you fall asleep on the right, you wake up on the left, but you're still firmly seated. You still have. But if you lie down and the one side is lifted from the surface, that means there's some relaxation and tension released on the muscular system. So it's easier for you to pass the wind. Is that a bit too technical? Or?
Yes. Definitely.
No, I was just asking, as long as your sit bones are remain constant, whether your upper body moves, but your
So if you fall asleep like this
but your buttocks is still firm.
and you wake up like this, wudu is broken.
If you don't wake up in the same way,
You change position.
everything correct.
You understand? So there's no problem. You're moving like this, some movement of the arms, but in terms of your positioning, you're in the same. But now you're waking up like this, or you're waking up like that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, I didn't say you're wrong. I just said it's complicated. So then we agree with you. That means, inshallah. No, that's not a better English term. Because I could be lying on my back and I fall into a slumber, and my wudu is not broken. I could be lying on my side, like the pose, the side pose. I could be. Oh, maaf, did I? That's still hurt. I apologize. Is that like an inappropriate thought? I was talking about the side pose, So the side pose, right? Now you're lying on your side, the rear is clearly exposed. But now what happens is you lose awareness, meaning that you fall into a slumber. What's the difference between a slumber and a sleep? When you're in a slumber, you're still conscious, right? So how do you know? Because you can hear the voices, and you have a jaded memory of what the people around you were talking about. You can still hear the voices. So the moment you can't hear the voices anymore, then you know you sleep. But anybody who's in a slumber knows, I was laying here all time, but I couldn't fall asleep. But you're half asleep because the voices, you can hear the voices, but you can't clearly recollect the conversation.
So then when you sleep, even if you sit, you will go down. Because my understanding was that what I learned is that if I get up and I don't even know where I am, or I'm lost, I don't know where that is, where then that could constitute that it was lost. But if I get up and I realize and after I sleep,
You see that guy there? See that guy there? If he wakes up after an hour, he has wudu.
okay, so
If he wakes up in that position after an hour, he has wudu.
so the notion about the notion when you fall into a sleep, something like this, and I get up and I don't know where I am. That is
Yeah, that's a sleep. That's a sleep.
what I'm saying. That's incorrect.
To think that the wudu would break?
Now, what I'm saying is, what I heard is that if you sit and I fall asleep here, and I get up, and I know exactly where I am, then you will not. But if you fall into such a deep sleep, something like this, and you get up and you lost complete, yeah, that doesn't break the rule.
Yeah, it doesn't break.
As long as you
As long as you're in the same
same
position.
position.
Right. Okay, sure.
No, the pair is about conscious and don't read and not
Mm. Yeah. So that's not like it's not what do you call it? It's like a barbit. What do you call it, barbit? No, it's like a barbit is like what do you call this? A yardstick. Knowing or not knowing where you are is not a yardstick for determining whether or not you're breaking. No, you can never put a time to fishing. You can fish all night. You must fish all night.
But I mean, like, if you're on your own now,
Mm.
and you're reciting or something,
Mm.
you fall off to sleep, I guess, and you wake up. But it's not a long time. Is it time that
No, it's not. It's not that. It's not that. One of the mentioned like one of the specialities of the Prophet ﷺ is mentioned in the hadith that the Anbiya in general, when they go to sleep, they don't lose consciousness. They don't lose consciousness. Yes. As a result. Right. So let's continue. So losing one's intellect in any which way, right, or becoming unconscious in any which way will break the wudu, right? Then touching the private parts with the inner palm of the hand, right? Not with the inner palms, with the inner palm of the hand, right? And this part of the we use another finger. This part of the finger will be included, right? This part of the finger here will be included, right? So generally, whatever you put here in between this wall, you touch. Will break the wudu, right? In terms of your private parts, someone else's private parts, doesn't matter. Baby, adult, right? would break the wudu. No, it doesn't. Accident, purpose, it doesn't. Right? Yeah, no difference. Dead or alive, right? So sometimes maybe perhaps you the what they call it, tukamani. Sometimes perhaps you the tukamani, and so. No. But I don't know. They use gloves. They use gloves. Then next would be the touching of the skin of the non-mahram, right? So when we touch the skin of the non-mahram, this will break the wudu, right? So I think that is quite clear. Whether mistake, purpose, will break the wudu.
Unless, obviously situational based, right? I'm saying like we take leave when we go for Hajj. Yeah, like so you.
Okay, yeah, that's a
follow-
separate, yeah,
from-
that's a separate case, yeah, in terms of Hajj. And,
Hajj,
yeah, that's a separate. I think you can learn in the Hajj class, inshallah. Sometimes it's easier to compartmentalize the discussion because any which discussion can take us into a different chapter of fiqh altogether. So we just have to, try to always reel ourselves back into the class. And you learn this in experience. Like sometimes it's exciting for the teacher also. Because, the interesting discussion. Let's go. Right? At the end of the term, the coach will ask you, how much did you cover of your syllabus? Coach, we had some good discussions. Right? Okay, so that's all that will nullify the wudu, right? So whatever is outside that, so common questions that come, what if I touch najasa, right? What if a dog touches me? And those are all najasat, right? The ritual, the impurities, no doubt, right? But what is required from you is not a wudu. What is required from you is simply to wash yourself from that physically, right? To wash yourself from that physically, right? MashaAllah, still time. So let us continue. If that is understood, then let us continue and read the next section. So now we're entering into Salah. Now we're entering into Salah. Right? So yeah, let's read. The validity of Salah is dependent on the following. Number one, awareness of the entrance of the time, either with certainty, yaqeen, or because of working it out, ijtihad, or an overwhelmingly strong supposition, ghalaba, al-dhann, because if you make salah with doubt, it is not a valid prayer, right? So here, in terms of doubt, we're speaking about you don't know whether or not you're facing the qibla, right? No, we're not speaking about any other kind of doubt. We say you can't doubt whether or not you're facing the qibla. You must face the qibla, right? Or at least you must know that you're facing the qibla, right? Whether or not you're correct is another story. Number two, that point was actually awareness of entrance of the time, right? The second is awareness of the qibla. Yes.
Once you're 5 degrees out, and you know you're 5 degrees out,
Then get 5 degrees in.
but what if that masjid isn't allowing the 5 degrees to come in?
Then you just turn.
So,
So number two, awareness of the qibla. Number three, covering the awra with a permitted clean cloth, right? And so there he has 2 points actually, covering the awra but with a clean cloth, right? And he says permitted over there. We'll explain what that means. The removal of impurity from the clothes, body, and place of prayer, right? And it is also necessary to play the obligatory, the fard salah, standing if one is able to do so, right? So this is an interesting point because to stand is also a rukn of salah. It's an integral of salah, but they mention it as a as a shart of salah also. So the understanding of this is that you have to start the salah standing. And you can't you can't stand as the first rukun of salah if you're not standing before you start the salah. It's kind of a technicality.
Man, the difference of Asana but is there a difference because I've seen many that that is mentioned that according to the Hanafi school that it is not a rukun to stand, even though they can.
I don't know. I don't know about the Hanafis. I don't know about the Malikis. I don't know about the Hanbalis. I don't know. Any Hanafis? No? Anyone prepared to speak on behalf of the Hanafi madhab? عبد الفتاح درست المذهب الحنفية ولا كيف؟ ما درستم؟ شافعي؟ ولا غير؟ So I don't know about that. It's a question myself. I've asked some Hanafi scholars and that, but I don't want to speak on behalf of any other madhab. In terms of training, I have I have like a reading understanding of the madhab, but not like really deep. So I won't speak on behalf of any of the other madhab. I can confidently say regarding the Shafi'i madhab that one has to stand. Allah knows best. I apologize for that. So number one, let's get into the awareness of the time, right? So there are many ways for a person to know that the time of the waqt has entered, right? So it says that either with certainty because of working it out, right? You're seeing, and I don't think I won't go into the detail of how do you know the time is Dhuhr, how do you know it's right? But it's quite simple actually. Dhuhr is the time of just after the time of istiwa. So what's istiwa? Istiwa is when I will speak to it in terms that we can understand. When the sun reaches the middle of the sky. After that, the moment after that, you get the word. So that time is called zawal. You can't make salah in that time. But it's practically impossible for you to make salah in zawal because it only lasts for a few moments, right? Until the sun moves away. So after that will be the word. After that will be the word. And at that time, I think at the equinox, there'll be no shadow. There'll be no shadow. But where we are situated in the world, at the time of Zawal, there is an existing shadow. There is an existing shadow. And I think many brothers have already tested this. So like at the time of Zawal, if you go outside and you stand, you check what time Zawal is and you look, and you will see that Zawal, there's an existing shadow, right? So the thing of there being a no shadow, in terms of the region that we are in, it's not won't be a valid way for you to know that it's the time of Dhuhr. Then, how do you know time of Asr is? Time of Asr will be, like we say, let's speak in terms of the equinox. The time of Dhuhr would have been when there's no shadow. The time of Asr would have been when the shadow is the same size as the object. So if the object is 10 centimeters, the shadow will be 10 centimeters. But let's say for argument's sake that in this region, at the time of Dhuhr, you have an existing shadow of 5 centimeters, right? Because, you have an existing shadow of 5 centimeters at Zawal. Then at Asr, when the 10 centimeter object's shadow is 15 centimeters, then it will be the beginning of Asr. So it's the size of the object plus the existing shadow at Zawal. It's for interest sake, really. Don't perhaps at some point it will serve you. It's a very simple concept, but just for you to know, it comes in a hadith as well, right? It comes in a hadith as well. In fact, it comes in a few narrations. So that's the time of Asr. So then Dhuhr goes until Asr. Asr goes until Maghrib. Right? And Maghrib is when? Maghrib is sunset. So what is sunset? Sunset is when the disk of the sun completely disappears. When the disk of the sun completely disappears, it will be sunset. Right? So not when the disk starts to disappear, when the disk of the sun completely disappears. And there will still be light in the sky at that time, but the disk of the sun will disappear. Right? So if you're at the ocean, which is the clearest test point for you to check it, because sometimes when you're traveling, you have to be wary of the mountains. So sometimes the sun is hiding behind the mountain, but if you have to look properly, then it's not set yet, right? So like if you go to Sea Point, for example, and then where it looks like the end of the earth in terms of the water, and then when the disk of the sun, when the top of the disk of the sun dips into the end of the earth, then you know that it's Maghrib, right? That's just in terms of how the eye views it. I'm not saying that's a reality, right? Like flat earthers. I'm just saying, I'm just describing it in how the eye would see it. And I hope that is understood from what I'm saying.
So the times that they publish like on the calendar is at earliest point when it's hitting.
ما بعرف. The times on the
You know the calendar that you get,
Mhm.
people following that. Those times is the earliest time that sort of what says it. Because I mean, the way you explain it's like a cool sort of give or take, and we can get 1, 2, 3 minutes out.
yeah.
If you do it without a watch or
In terms of astronomical, I think it's astronomical. In terms of astronomical calculations, uh, that's what that's the time is calculated to represent that reality. If that answers your question. In terms of when you calculate for this, the time is calculated to represent that reality, right?
Maar is amazing that for the general public, it's very difficult for them to physically do that, especially if there's no flat surface that they can. So they have to create a means that suffices within that, but for the general public.
On a broader range, yeah. Naturally, if you depending on where you are, like this, even like in an area that you would consider the same area, but there could be, or let's say like in a town, like a large town, it could be considered to be the same. Over a distance range, you could have like people seeing the sunset different time, right? Because that's the nature of the world, right? But I think that built up areas present a specific challenge in this regard, right? We live in the suburbs and that. So like as be as zealous as you want to be, man. Regarding we must go look at the sun and whatever. Be however zealous you want to be, but then also bring us a practical method by which we can see it. So I believe the calculations to serve its utility, Allah knows best. So that's the one way of knowing. If you see those things, you will know certainly. So then, after the sun sets, right, there will be a redness in the sky, right? And as it gets darker, this redness will remain, right? And this redness will then turn into it will get smaller, smaller and smaller and smaller, until it's as if a line of red remains. And then that will also disappear. When that disappears, then you get Aisha. When that disappears, then you get Aisha. And Aisha will be till Fajr. Right?
Just so there's two views on Aisha. One is when the ray disappears, the other is when all white disappears, when it's pitch black. So when the sky is black versus when the ray disappears, because it's a difference in time, about 10 minutes between those two events.
Yeah. So in terms of our discussion, we represent what's the strong view of the madhab. And like even in Cape Town, Masajid practice on both views. And we have no conflict. If you go to Bukap, you'll see it. Go to this masjid, 10 minutes, go to that. So no problem. All valid opinions. valid opinions, right? Even across the madhab, there's difference in terms of time, asr, and so forth, right? Allah knows best. Like I said, I won't speak about other madhab and so forth, lest they find this clip. Like, hey, which one of us trained you? Like, well, I wasn't trained. So I stay clear from that, right? I stay clear from that. But you're correct to say that in across the madhab, and even in the madhab, there are discussion, but inshallah, what we're presenting is the official views of the Shafi'i madhab, and Allah knows best. Yes. So then Fajr will be when? Fajr will be, comes in the Quran, حتى يتبين لكم الخيط الأبيض من الخيط الأسود من الفجر. The verse reads that until is clear to you the black thread from the white thread from the black thread, right? So that's the black thread refers to that the black, like I mean the white thread refers to that white horizontal light in the sky, right? So that you call Fajr Sadiq. So you will see if you look on the calendar, they will say Subh Sadiq. That's because you get a Subh Kadib, you get a Fajr Kadib. And the Fajr Kadib would be what? Would be a lightness that appears in the very much in the latter portion of the night, right? Before the actual Fajr. But the difference between this light and the light of Fajr is that this light is vertical and the light of Fajr is horizontal, right? And you generally won't see it here because of light pollution. Because of light pollution, right? So because of the way that the city is artificially lighted, you don't. In fact, you don't see these changes in the sky. So you would have to go some distance away from the light pollution in order for you to experience this. So the modern, like just the physical modern context that we live in, we have to admit to ourselves that it presents us with some challenges. It comes with its challenges, man. But in the same time, these tools of calculation that we use, the jurists have always seen them to be valid, right? Even if they differ regarding what is the best method, but they've always considered them to be valid. And I think in our context, we find that this is the only practical method for us to use. Not the only, but perhaps it is the easiest by far practical method to use. Right? So that would be Fajr. And Fajr goes until sunrise. Fajr goes until sunrise, right? Not until Dhuhr. Right? Fajr goes until sunrise. Yes.
I was trying to ask now, the same apply with regard to like the Maghrib as well. But sometimes the light appears before the sun actually passes the horizon. So it's actually when so I'm asked, my question is it when the disk of the sun passes that, it's called the flat earth line, and then that's sunrise starts. So the light
sunrise.
the light can come before the sun actually rises. The light actually does come before the sun.
Yeah, the light.
Must the whole disk be up?
Must the whole disk be up?
Start.
I don't know actually.
That's the question. Must the whole disk be up?
What do you say?
No, for sunrise.
Is sunrise the first part of the disk, or is sunrise when the disk is up in its entirety?
That's the question. I don't know the answer.
You the astronomical guy?
Yeah, I don't know that answer.
Okay, let's see. So that will be awqatus.
I would assume that it is the same. The whole disk must be up. It would be the same. Sunrise and sunset would be the same. Usually.
181.
Astronomically, the same time they show for sunrise would be the same time as the sunset. It would be the same. We'll calculate it on the same basis because it's opposite. But I'm not sure if the time you see in the calendar is whole disk or starting disk. I don't know.
My position was always like I thought it was like start from this.
I suppose
The
that's
message
it.
is it's over the line.
Beautiful. So here they say, in terms of Fajr, يدخل بطلوع الفجر الصادق. Right, so it enters, and we see the line of true Fajr. And it exits بطلوع جزء من قرص الشمس. With the first portion of the disk of the sun, that's considered a sunrise, right? Or let us rather say that is the time when Fajr elapses, right? Lest some expert on sunrise comes and tell us sunrise is when the when the disk comes out completely. In terms of our practice, for the mas'ala, for the question that we're asking, when does Fajr end? When the disk starts to come out, right? The first portion of that. Let us let yeah let's
Does it cover, the book cover, Adhan is a requirement for Salah?
So adhan is a sunnah from the sunnahs of salah, right? The adhan is also a valid means by which a person can start to make salah, right? So if you know that the muazzin is always going to make salah on time, I mean always going to make adhan on time, undoubtedly, then you can follow that as a means to know that the waqt is right, is valid. That's the point of the adhan, right? That's the point of the adhan. Then you could find yourself in a situation where there's no muazzin, you cannot see all of this, and like perhaps you're in prison or the like, then how would you know? Right? How would you know? So you would make what they call each. You would do some calculation in relation. For example, you know that, okay, now I see it's light. Definitely Fajr now, but it's definitely not sunrise. Now you make Fajr. Now you say from this time, right? Say for example, I'm in prison. From this time to the time that they, from here to the time that they serve the first meal will be approximately 4 hours or something like that. Or you say from this time till Dhuhr, I will be able to do 1,000 push-ups. Maybe if you're in prison, you do something like that, right? And then if that's like a normative exercise by which you can calculate, you can do that. Any other such thing by which you can calculate. Remember, this is not normal, but this is in the condition that you cannot know the waqt except via like this type of judgment. So you can use anything that is a valid calculation of time. Then if you don't even have those measures, then you just go with what is the most probable to you at that time. So if you're in solitary confinement, for example, you have no measure of time whatsoever. You're just like, okay, I think it's Asr now. I think it's Maghrib, make Salah.
What did you in the north, like in Norway, Denmark, the sun doesn't set?
Yeah, they follow the closest times. They follow the times of places that are closest to them. Right. Same with fasting. Same with fasting.
So, just with Maghrib, how long does Maghrib last?
To Aisha.
Okay, for Shafi. But for
Till the read is.
which exists before.
Yeah.
But how long is it?
It's a 1 hour, 10 minutes will suffice for that. It's just over the hour. But the black, the other one, the other view is more than 1 hour, 10 minutes. Well, 1 hour, 15 minutes.
I thought it was much shorter than that.
I don't know if that's the shortest time, like depending on the season and so forth. These variables, like they change. These variables, they do change. That's why I'm just comfortable to say Tal Isha. So you never really think 1 hour, 10 minutes. It's got nothing to do with that. It's got to do with when Aisha is. The moment we tell you 1 hour, 10 minutes, you're going to find yourself in a problem. Because when you go to another city, you go to Joburg or something, those things won't necessarily apply. So for us to, if you, when does Maghrib end? Isha. Yeah. But now, when can you stop? When's the last that you can make Maghrib? Not on that moment. there must be enough time left of the waqt of Maghrib for you to be possible to make Maghrib.
So not 1 minute and why doesn't take it 3 minutes or 5 minutes?
Yeah.
There's three time zones. There's astronomical twilight, there is civil twilight, and there is nautical twilight. So if you look at the three, each one symbolizes a different, exactly 1/3 of a gap between pitch black and sunset, or pitch black and sunrise, or full sunrise and start of the true Fajr. It's the same on either side, on sunset and Fajr. It's the three zones. Now, this when the ray disappears, it's actually just past the second zone.
I tell you, this Habib know all this stuff.
Yeah, you must be not forced on
So that's a nautical twilight. That is when the ray disappears.
You know anything about star signs? I think if there's no other questions, we suffice ourselves for that for today, inshallah al-Fattah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us beneficial knowledge and facilitate ease for us in our condition, that we can be people who pray our salah inshallah on time, and also that wherever we are, that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitate for us such practice inshallah. And also opportunity. I know the Mizan guys are like hiking guys and so forth. So it's nice to have a little bit of the theory and put it into, and see if you can put it into practice. You have your safety nets, you take your calendars and all of that. But it's always nice to see it in action. So inshallah, perhaps a good exercise for the hikes and the go-aways and so forth. Inshallah. عندنا سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك